Okay, so for our Quincey Throw, we are using Lion Brand's Re-Spun Thick and Quick, and this is the color Whipped Cream. It is a super bulky weight 6, and we're going to be using a 10mm Tunisian crochet hook. I have it on a cord here. This is from Lantern Moon, and I believe the hook is actually Knitter's Pride, I think, but it joins nicely with my Lantern Moon cords, and this is a 40-inch cord, and that was plenty long for making the blanket that in the size that I wanted. So what I'm going to do today is, for the tutorial, I'm going to be making like a miniature version of the Quincey Throw. Since it's such a large throw, it's hard to show all of that on camera. So I'm using the same yarn and hook that I used for the Quincey Throw, but just in a smaller version, but you'll get the main idea of how this blanket is constructed. So let's go ahead and get started. Okay, so for the Quincey, we are using Tunisian crochet, which is a little bit different than traditional crochet, but I'm hoping that if you're watching this video and you want to give it a try, even if you've never done Tunisian crochet before, you should be able to still make this blanket just from this tutorial. So we start the same way. We're going to put a slip knot on our hook, and then we're going to chain the number of stitches indicated in the pattern. So for the full Quincey Throw, you'll be chaining 110. We want to have a multiple of 20 plus 10. So if you want to make your blanket smaller or larger, just make sure that you have a multiple of 20 plus 10 stitches. So for our sample, we're just going to be doing 30 chains. Okay, so here we have our 30 chains, and what we want to do is we want to do a foundation row for our starting of our Tunisian crochet blanket. So this loop on our hook is actually going to count as our first stitch, and then we want to look on the bottom of our chains, and you see these little back bumps here along the bottom? That's where we're going to be drawing up our loops. So I'm going to skip this first one since we already have a loop on our hook, and that is our first stitch. And I'm going to go into the back bump of the next stitch, yarn over, and draw up a loop. Then go into the next bump, yarn over, draw up a loop. And I'm just going to continue that all the way down the chain until I've drawn up a loop through every single back bump. Okay, so this is how Tunisian crochet is a little bit different than traditional crochet. We're drawing up loops in one pass. This is called the forward pass. And then we will do a return pass where we go through and drop all of those loops. So just continue to pick up loops in those back bumps. And just as how we chained 30, we should then end with 30 loops on our hook. Okay, so we're working through that last bump here. So I've drawn up 30 loops on my hook, and you can see that my loops are going down my cord. I'm trying to keep my cord from making that noise by kind of holding the end here. So we'll see how noisy it gets. But now we're ready to do our first return pass. So this is row 1. We've drawn up the loops. So each row will include a forward pass where you're picking up your loops and a return pass where you're dropping them off. Okay, so the first stitch of our return pass, we're just going to draw yarn over and draw our yarn through that first loop. Then for the rest, we're going to yarn over and draw through 2 loops. So 1, 2. It helps to kind of slide your stitches up onto your hook. So again, yarn over, draw through 2, yarn over, draw through 2. Let's see if I can pick up this cord a little more. Okay, yarn over, draw through 2, yarn over, draw through 2. And we're just going to do this all the way down our row. And then again, just kind of pushing those stitches up towards our tip of our hook as we go. Okay, so we'll end and we have 1 loop on our hook. Okay, so for rows 2 through 9, they're all going to be worked the same. So we're going to start by working a Tunisian purl stitch. So we already have a loop on our hook, and again, this counts as our first stitch. And if you follow that loop down, this vertical bar here is the first stitch of the previous row. So we're not ever going to work into this vertical bar. We're always going to start with the second stitch. So we're going to start by working a Tunisian purl stitch, and we're going to do that 9 times. Since this counts as 1 stitch, that will make the 10 stitches of our first block of our throw. So to do Tunisian purl stitch, we want to work around our working yarn. So we kind of want to bring it almost to the front, but I just kind of move my hook to the back. Whoops. Then insert my hook as if I'm doing the simple stitch. Then kind of bring my yarn around and to the back of my hook, then yarn over and draw up a loop. So this is probably the most complicated of the stitches in this blanket, but I promise it's not as difficult as it looks. So again, I bring my hook behind the working yarn and through the next stitch. Then I bring my working yarn to the back of my hook, yarn over, and pull up a loop. So this is what gives us those little purls like you would see in knitting. And we're going to do that 9 times. So that's 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and 9. Okay, so that should give us 3, 6, 9, 10 loops total on our hook right now. Because remember, our first stitch was already here, but we've worked 9 Tunisian purl stitches. Okay, now we want to switch, and we're going to do 10 Tunisian knit stitches. Okay, so here's our vertical bar here of our next stitch. We want to go all the way through. So instead of just picking up that vertical bar, we want to go through. Okay, so all the way through to the back, yarn over, draw up a loop. Okay, so hopefully you can see kind of like we're going through this little space right here. So go all the way through, draw up a loop. This is going to look like the knit stitch, similar to knitting. Tuck my little end. I'm sure you can probably hear my cat running around too. He's going crazy right now. But anyway, we're going to Tunisian knit stitch for 10 stitches. Let me see how many I've done. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Okay, so when you're making the Quincey throw, obviously you're going to have many more stitches to get through. So we would do 10 Tunisian knit stitches and then 10 Tunisian purl stitches and repeat that all the way across until we have 10 stitches left. Okay, but we already have our 10 stitches left since we only are doing 30 stitches. So once you've repeated all the way across and you have 10 stitches left, you should be about to do Tunisian purl stitches again. Okay, so we're going to do 9 Tunisian purl stitches again. So there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and 9. And the reason we only are doing 9 at the end, we're still going to have 10 stitches in this square, but our last stitch is always worked a little bit differently. So you'll notice in the written pattern, I've written LTS. That stands for last stitch. And that one, we always are going to go through these 2 vertical bars here. So it kind of like, you see how we have 2 vertical bars right there? We want to stick our hook in there, yarn over, and draw up a loop. And that's going to give us a nice clean edge. The same reason why we don't do that first stitch is the same reason why we do this last stitch a little bit different. We want those edges to have like look like little knit stitches on either side. Then we're ready to do our return pass, and just as we did for row 1, our first stitch we only yarn over and draw through 1 loop. Then we're going to yarn over and draw through 2 all the way across. Oops. Not through 3, only through 2. Pull out some more yarn there. Okay. So that's what we're going to have at the end of row 2. You can kind of see we are going to have our purl stitches here and our knit stitches in here, and we're making those blocks so it looks like a checkerboard. So you're going to repeat row 2 7 more times. So rows 2 through 9 are the same. We start with 9 Tunisian purl stitches, then we repeat. Then we do 10 Tunisian knit stitches, 10 purl, 10 knit, 10 purl, 10 knit, till we have 10 stitches left. Then we're going to do 9 Tunisian purl stitches and then do our last stitch and our return pass. So I'm going to go ahead and work up through the end of row 9, and I'll show you how to do rows 10 through 17. Okay, so this is what your blanket will look like once you get through row 9. And you'll know that you've done enough rows because you can count your rows of Tunisian purl stitch. So we have these little bumps here. We can count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So you should have 8 rows of bumps before switching to the next set of squares. So for rows 10 through 17, we're doing very similar things, but we're doing the opposite. So instead of starting with Tunisian purl, we're going to start with Tunisian knit. So then we're going to do, so we'll have knit square, purl square, knit square. Okay, so again, just as before, this is our first stitch. It's already on our hook, so we don't need to go through this vertical bar. And then we'll be starting with the knit stitch. We're going to do 9 Tunisian knit stitches. So again, going kind of through the whole piece into this little space right here. And we'll pick up 9 stitches. Since we already have this one here, but we'll have a total of 10 loops on our hook then. And then we're going to be doing Tunisian purl stitch for 10. So again, bring your yarn towards the front, go through the stitch as if doing a Tunisian simple stitch, bring the yarn back of the hook, yarn over, pull up a loop. So just as you'll do, or as you did in the first set of rows, you'll do, 10 purl stitches, 10 knit stitches, 10 purl stitches, 10 knit stitches, all the way across until you have 10 stitches left. And this time you'll be ending with getting ready to do those knit stitches. Then I always like to count this first row purl stitches because sometimes it's easy to miss a stitch in there, but we have 3, 6, 9, 10, and we've gotten to our last 10 stitches. So again, we're going to do 9 Tunisian knit stitches. I feel like I went through the wrong strand there. Okay. 3 and 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and 9. And again, that last stitch, we want to go through both of these vertical bars. So if you kind of like move your stitch up, you'll see both these vertical bars here. And now we will do our return pass. Again, yarn over, draw through 1, yarn over, draw through 2, and repeat that all the way across. And then we'll just repeat that same row. So rows 10 through 17 are all worked the same. And again, when you finish, you can count up this block of purls and you should have 8 of those purl rows. Oh boy, gotta keep that end in my hand so it doesn't make so much noise. Okay. Okay, so this is kind of like our transitional row here. I'm going to repeat that row 7 more times. Okay, so rows 10 through 17, starting, you'll start with your knit stitches, then your purls, end with knit stitches. And then I will tell you what to do after that. So go ahead and work up your next set all the way through row 17. Okay, so this is what your blanket will look like after you've done the 17th row. And here, if we count our Tunisian purl stitch rows again, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So now we know we're going to switch back and we're going to repeat all those rows again. So rows 2 through 17, and we're going to repeat that 7 more times. And then we'll have a total of 16 sets of squares. And once we've gotten to that point, we're going to repeat rows 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. I couldn't remember the count. 2 through 9, one more time for a total of 17 rows of these squares. So again, we'll repeat rows 2 through 9, and that would be starting with a Tunisian purl stitch. Let me pick up my cord so it's not making as much noise. go. Remember, we start with 9 Tunisian purl stitches, since that first loop on our hook counts as our first stitch. Okay, and then we'll do 10 Tunisian knit stitches. Remember, we're going through like under this loop here, but all the way through to the back, yarning over and drawing up a loop. So Tunisian knit stitch for 10. And then once you have 10 stitches remaining, we will do Tunisian purl stitch for 9 before doing that last stitch by going through both those vertical bars. So now that last stitch, as always, through both those vertical bars, and then we'll do our return pass by yarning over, drawing through 1 loop, and then yarning over, drawing through 2, yarn over, draw through 2, all the way across our row, just as we did at the very beginning. So again, repeat rows 2 through 17 for a total of 16 sets, or 8 repeats total, including that first one we did. And then you'll repeat rows 2 through 9 one more time. And once we get through that last repeat, I will hop back on and I will show you how to finish off your blanket with a bind off, and then adding an optional single crochet border all the way around. So I'm going to go ahead and work up my next couple rows here, my next 7 rows, and then I'll meet you back here. Okay, so this is similar to what your blanket will look like once you are all finished. You should have 17 squares of stitches going up, and you'll have 11 going across, and then it'll be time to do our bind off. So using your hook, I'm going to go ahead and unattach my cord since we don't need a long cord anymore. We're going to be doing a slip stitch bind off as if we're doing the Tunisian simple stitch. So I'm going to go into this first stitch here, this first vertical bar, yarn over, draw a loop through, and then draw that loop through the current loop on my hook. And we're just going to do that all the way across the top of our work. And this will give us a nice slip stitched edge that will look very similar to how we started our blanket. Okay, so we've gotten to the last stitch here, and just as before, we're going to go through both loops, both vertical bars, and then do our slip stitch here. So we could stop right here, fasten off, weave in our ends, block our blanket a little bit to get these edges to lay flat and be done. But you could also do an optional border, and that's just a simple single crochet border. And to do that, we're gonna chain 1 and then single crochet back into those same vertical bars. Chain 1, single crochet again, and this is what you'll do for each corner. And then we're just going to single crochet in each set of vertical bars all the way across. Then we're getting to our next corner here. And same as last corner, we're going to single crochet, chain 1, and then single crochet again into that same stitch, and then single crochet in each stitch all the way across the bottom. And since these are the beginning chains, it might take a little bit of extra work just to get your hook underneath those stitches. But you'll just continue single crochet all the way around here, work your corner stitch, single crochet here, corner stitch, single crochet across, and then we can slip stitch to join, and that just gives you a nice, smooth, clean single crochet border to your blanket. But again, the border is completely optional. It's up to you. So I hope that you enjoyed this tutorial. Again, you can find full written instructions over on the Meghan Makes Do blog, as well as the PDF version in my shop, or grab the complete kit from Lion Brand Yarn. Thanks so much for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe.